Okay, so I have the honor today of interviewing Giovanni Tomasi, class of 2008. Giovanni, what's your rank now with the military?
So I'm a major in the United States Army.
All right. We just have a couple questions for you today about your experience in the military and kind of how you even went this direction in life. So the first one is, what inspired you to join the military and how did your service impact your life?
Okay, awesome. Well, first and foremost, thanks so much for having me. It's a real honor and pleasure to be able to talk to the students of East Catholic. Um, so yeah, I've always wanted to be in the military. I think especially going to East Catholic, having a strong foundation in service helped motivate me to continue pursuing that calling. Um, After leaving East Catholic, I received an ROTC scholarship, was commissioned right out of undergrad, and have been an officer in the United States Army ever since, and been loving every step of the journey.
Do you have a particularly memorable experience from your time in the military so far that you could share?
I mean, I've got a lot of really memorable experiences. But I think probably the one that stands out the most was I was deployed to Afghanistan from 2014 to 2015. Um, I was wounded in Afghanistan, and Christmas Day 2014, John McCain presented me my Purple Heart at Fob Gambury with some of my peers who also were receiving awards. And yeah, that was really memorable, awesome experience.
How has that impacted you going forward from that? Because that's huge. That's a huge experience.
Well, I think, that one experience is it's part of the mosaic of experiences that fill a career. It's really hard to say, especially when you're in the military, to say that this one thing or this one particular event was defining, because I would say even more defining than any one particular event, it's been the people that I've had the privilege to serve with, specifically, my sergeants, my soldiers, the fellow officers I've served with. That has been the most memorable part of this career, and having the privilege of making those relationships. And even, here I am 11 years in, I can pick up my cell phone right now, call somebody who I served with my first couple months in the military, and we could pick up like no time has passed. That's happened. I've bumped into people throughout the service that, I mean, just 2 weeks ago, I bumped into a guy 11 years ago. We were in our basic officer course together. He's like, holy moly, what's up? Good to see you. And, it was like no time had passed.
So, speaking of your fellow service members, what kind of sacrifices did you and your fellow service members have to make while you were serving your country?
Well, so I think the big thing is, you sacrifice having the stability of being from one place, which a lot of us from the Central Connecticut area, we grew up, 18 years. Like I grew up in Coventry and then went to East Catholic, and we had my sister and I lived in the same house growing up until we left for college. And you sacrifice that being in the military, but what you gain on the flip side is you get so many experiences that most people don't get to have. I mean, I've lived in uh, I don't know, like 5 or 6 different states. I've lived in 4 different countries. I mean, it's something that a lot of people don't get to experience that. I'm very thankful to have that opportunity.
Do you think it's also changed your experience on, or your not experience, your perspective on freedom and democracy as a result of serving in the military?
I think it's definitely nuanced it. Yeah. I mean, I think understanding that it's a big world out there, and it's a very big and diverse country, where coming from small town Connecticut, I think I thought that America was a certain way and that everybody had similar experiences that I had. And then I started serving the army, and I had my counterparts who were sergeants who were from all different backgrounds, ethnicities, places, different experiences. And I think I realized that it's important to have all those different perspectives in understanding what democracy and what freedom, what our country means, that everybody's different experiences are part of the whole totality of what it means to be an American, and that nobody is more or less American than anybody else, and that every experience is uniquely American.
So, what advice would you give to young people considering entering the military?
I would say if you're even considering it, do it. Do it for a short time. You don't have to make a career out of it. I've gone 4 year period saying, I'm getting out. This is it. I'm done. I know people, one of my best friends, he did get out after 4 years of service, went to West Point. Now he's doing great things in the software sales industry. But if you're thinking about it and you think you have that calling, I would encourage you to following your calling, because it's really a tremendous opportunity. The experiences there's so many different jobs you can have in the military that you don't have to be an infantry officer like I started off as. You can do almost anything you can do on the civilian side while in the military, and you get the benefit of having served, having those experiences, experiencing the diversity of culture and diversity of experiences. And when you get out, you also have the benefit of you're a veteran for the rest of your life, which is, just the experience, but also the tangible benefits that come along with that. So I'd highly recommend, if you're thinking about pursuing it, go ahead and pursue it.
What route, I feel like I probably should have started with this. What route did you take after East Catholic to head towards military service?
Yeah, certainly. So I opted to do an ROTC scholarship. So I went to George Washington University in DC for my undergrad. And for all 4 years, I had an ROTC scholarship, which paid for my tuition. And then afterwards, I was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the infantry. And I served 9 years infantry officer. Now I'm a foreign area officer with a regional specialization on Europe and Eurasia.
Nice. I was reading the bio that I did for our PowerPoint, and it is incredible how much you have accomplished in the 15 years since graduation from here, but in the 11 years that you've served, it's really incredible to see the long list of accomplishments.
Yeah, thank you.
And still be so young. So did you have any specific challenges when you transitioned back to civilian life after you were serving overseas? Or do you think do you think there's significant challenges when any members of the military transition back to civilian life, and how can we as regular civilians kind of help to address those?
So I think the big thing that, granted, I've been fortunate that I haven't experienced it. I've been trying to be involved with the mental health movement for veterans and former members of the military, because it really is a big issue. I think the biggest thing that causes it is the lack of community. The reason why you have some people who get out, who talk about their military service for 30 years, is they haven't found that community in the civilian side that they had in the military, the sense of purpose and meaning in their civilian endeavors. And I think, maybe not individually, but I think collectively as society, we can do a better job of providing meaning, not necessarily just to members of the military, but to everybody. I think it was, I forgot who the political scientist was who wrote the book, Are We Bowling Alone? And the breakdown of civil society and the fact, communities existing with, he used bowling clubs, for example, but, anything like church groups, you name it. I think welcoming those people in and not having assumptions about veterans that because you're a veteran, you have PTSD, that that you've had these bad experiences, you're not able to do this, that, or whatever. I mean, ultimately, everybody is a human being and an American who's traveling their own road, and everybody has value that they can bring to any organization. Just welcoming new members of our community in with open arms.
So obviously I'm interviewing you today for our Veterans Day program. What's the importance of Veterans Day in honoring, remembering the services and sacrifices of veterans? And kind of on the flip side, or the addition of that, would be, how can high school students best support and show appreciation for veterans and active duty service members?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think just being interested in, the stories of military service, the experiences. Like there are, I'm not going to sugarcoat and say it's always easy, but I think like being interested in the stories, people and their service and its contribution to really world history. Um, Recently I had a great uncle who passed away who was in the Berlin standoff during the Cold War. I mean, he only served for I think like 3 or 4 years, but I mean, that is a world event that I had the opportunity to sit down with him and talk to him when I was younger, and he was able to share his stories, and just being able to remember that and talking to veterans about their service and appreciating what they did. And, again, understanding as part of what our nation's story is and the important fabric of that.
So then how can the lessons that you've learned from your military experience benefit our society and future generations going forward?
Yeah, I would say, I think your theme last year was on grit.
Yeah.
One of the lessons I've learned is perseverance, right? I would say grit is perseverance. There have been many things I've done that have been hard, but not difficult in the sense that like it's unpleasant. You have to just keep driving forward, put your head down and keep driving, put one step in front of the other, but ultimately you're going to get there. If you have a sense of meaning, a sense of purpose, and know that you're working towards an objective, you can get it done, right? And I think that applies throughout society. For people going through tough times, as long as you have a sense of purpose in what you're doing, you can get through that tough time and you can accomplish your objective. For me, that's something I think is very relevant. I also think the sense of purpose is very important in and of itself. Like seeking something, whether it be your job, whether it be a hobby, whether it be your family, whatever, having purpose and meaning in your life to work towards.
Well, my final question was going to be what advice do you have for the students sitting in front of you, and the students of East Catholic or the East Catholic community? I think a lot of what you said too about having a purpose kind of translates to that as well, that as we have seniors going on to next steps after graduation, that they find whatever it is that gives them purpose, and then same going forward with our freshmen, sophomores, and juniors. But is there any other message that you think is really important or that you've kind of reflected on since graduation here, since being a part of the military, anything that you think would be meaningful to the East Catholic classes in front of you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I very frequently reflect on my time at East Catholic, and I would encourage current students to not take it for granted. Kind of tying in this year's theme of integrity. Take your time at East Catholic to really develop your moral character, to focus on that integrity, doing what's right when nobody's around, because ultimately the foundation that you set in East Catholic is is the foundation you're going to build on for the rest of your life. So taking advantage of that, having those relationships with your classmates, building those connections, and exploring what your integrity means to you, and how you can go forward, take the lessons on values, morals, good character that you learned at East Catholic, take that into the world and go forward and do whatever you're going to do in whatever area of life, and follow your calling and do it to a high sense of integrity and moral values.
Thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
I would completely echo the sentiments about character and community and connections, and that is how we are sitting here today recording this. I was lucky enough to meet you in Algebra 2 back in 2004 or 5, something like that. So, and here we are, still friends to this day. So I know a lot of your story in terms of your journey since East Catholic, but I really appreciate you taking the time to share that with everybody else, because I think there's a lot of value in what you've done and in the lessons you've learned. And I think it's really important that we do get to hear those stories and hear what our veterans have done, what their contributions have been, and their purpose. So thank you again for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me. It's really an honor and a privilege to be able to speak to the students of East Catholic.